Hey everybody, good morning. This is Mr. Ainsworth, and we're going to get into a lesson here, our fourth lesson on factoring trinomials. And we're going to use our main technique, which is called factor by grouping here. This is part two of a series of lessons. And we're going to do it where, or factor a trinomial where the lead coefficient is not 1. Okay, notice the title here underneath our main title, lead coefficient not equal to 1. In our previous lesson, it was equal to 1. It was fairly straightforward. This one, same thing, but you have to do something a little bit different. You're going to see a slight modification of the previous lesson. All right, so if you want, have your lesson, the previous one, 6-3 out, side by side, because you're going to see the same techniques. We just have to modify it slightly. Okay, but first, let's warm up here. Let's go ahead and just show factor by grouping here. Again, the first two terms represent our first group. The second terms, or the third and fourth terms represent our second group. Okay, now I noticed out of the first group here, I see a 4 as a GCF, a greatest common factor. Also see that when I compare the n squared with the n cubed, I notice I need a common factor of n squared too. So I'm going to factor out a 4n squared out of the first group. All right, I need to do that. So 4n squared times n will give me the 4n cubed. I see a plus sign. And let me see, 4n squared times 2 will give me the 8n squared. So I check by distributing back through. Okay, check by distributing. So check by distributing, and you can see that you're right, okay? Now I notice that in the second group, both terms are negative and both are divisible by 5. So in my second group, I'm going to distribute out a negative 5. And when I do that, the signs change. Negative 5 times n is negative 5n. Negative 5 times positive 2 will give me the negative 10 right there. Also notice that the binomials are the same. Okay, let me highlight the common binomial right there. That's the one we're going to factor out. It's called n plus 2. All right, multiply it by the remaining factors, 4n squared minus 5. All right, and that goes here, 4n squared minus 5. Now you can check with FOIL if you want. All right, but here's your factor pair right here. N plus 2 times the quantity, 4n squared minus 5. All right, and we call that factor by grouping. That's our main technique. All right, factor by grouping. We're going to use that to factor all the trinomials. All right, but the question is, how do you split this middle term? All right, so let's play the number game again. Okay, this time there's a slight modification. What I want you guys to do is multiply the first and third coefficients, okay, the 2 and the 1. So I'm going to put a times symbol there. 2 times 1 is 2, so I'm going to put 2 there. That's the modification. We didn't do that last time because the lead coefficient was 1. It wasn't necessary. So this time you want to be thinking, what two numbers multiply to 2 and add to 3? So I'm going to put a 3 here. So what two numbers multiply to 2 and add to 3? And you want to figure those numbers out. All right, let me see now. The factors of 2, since 2 is prime, is 1 and 2. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So the factors are 1 and 2. Those are the only choices I have, really, because 2 is prime. All right, so we're going to split the middle term. So I'm going to take, let me just rewrite it over here. I've got 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Now I'm going to highlight the middle term right here. And I'm going to make a note right here. I'm going to split the middle term just like I did in the last lesson. So split the middle term. All right, how do I do that? Well, I'm going to use these two terms right here. So this is going to become 1x, and that's 2x, because 1x plus 2x is 3x, right? So splitting the middle term, it looks like this. 2x squared plus 1x plus 2x in either order. It's probably going to be easier if I switch these around because I see a common factor of 2 here. So let me switch the order here. So I'm going to rewrite it as 2x plus 1x here. There is splitting the middle term and then plus 1. And now I have 4 terms instead of 3 because I split the middle term. Now we do a little factor by grouping. All right, so here we go. First group here, I see the first group, and here's my second group. Out of the first group, I see a 2x in common, so I'm going to factor that out. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x. And there's nothing in common with the in the second group. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put parentheses around the x plus 1 to show the grouping. All right, I'm going to put a 1 in front. That helps you see the common factor, okay, the common binomial. So put parentheses around the second group and just put a 1 in front. You can do that because the coefficient of any group is 1. Okay, highlight the common binomial, and that goes first. So I'm going to start off with x plus 1. That's what's in common. Multiply by the remaining factors, just like we always do in factor by grouping, and that becomes a 2x plus 1. 2x plus 1. There we go. And that's how you factor a trinomial using the factor by grouping technique. But this time we had to modify it slightly. We had to multiply the first and third terms together, the coefficients that is, and we think, okay, what two numbers multiply to 2 and add to 3? That's the only modification compared to yesterday's lesson. Okay? And let's get good at it. So let's do it again. Okay? We're going to multiply, all right, 3 and negative 4, and that's obviously negative 12. So what two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to, let me see, this is a negative 1 right here. So let's put a negative 1. So now I'm thinking, what two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 1? Now I know the factors of 12 are 12 and 1. So 12 and 1, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Those are the factors of 12, factor pairs. And now 3 times 4 is 12. One of them has to be negative. And I want to pick the pair of factors that also adds to negative 1. Okay, so if I pick negative 3 and 4, I get negative 12. Negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. That doesn't work, so I switch the signs. And I get 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. All right, so once again, let me bring this over here. So we have 3x squared, whoops, minus x minus 4. I'm going to split the middle term, 3x squared plus 3x minus 4x. You'll see the splitting there. All right, minus the 4. I just split the middle term there. 3x minus 4x is negative x. You can see that I just rewrote it, okay, or what I say, split the middle term. That's my common phrase that I use because it makes sense. I'm splitting into two terms. Factor out the GCF of 3x. Factor out the negative 4 here. Remember, these binomials are always going to be the same. Always. You can expect that. And you check by distributing back through. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times positive 1 is negative 4. See? It works. When you see a binomial in common, factor it out every single time. You do enough of these, the light bulb should turn on and you should be able to get it, especially if you use color. You can see what's going on here. There's something in common here. So my original trinomial has been factored into a pair of factors I call a factor pair. So the only change in the game is, multiplying the first and third terms. That's the only change in the game. So let's try it again. Multiply the 5 and 2. All right, multiply, put a times symbol there. So that's 10. So what two numbers multiply to 10 and add to negative 11? So the factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Those are the only possibilities, right? Okay, well, let's see. I want the factors that add to negative 11 here. So I want them to multiply to 10 and add to a negative 11. So if I make them both negative, negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10. And negative 1 plus negative 10 is negative 11. The other pair doesn't work. Negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7, not negative 11. So I'm going to pick the first pair of factors. So negative 1 and negative 10 works. So here we go. Let's split the middle term again. So 5x squared minus 11x plus 2. Splitting the middle term. Let me see. 5 and 10 have a common factor, so I'm going to write this one first. So 5x squared minus 10x minus x, okay, plus 2. Now I put the 10, I used the negative 10 factor first because I saw a common factor with the 5. Makes it just a little bit easier. So I'm going to factor out a 5x here. 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times negative 2 is negative 10x. Here, there's nothing common, but I need to distribute out a negative. When I told you guys that whenever that term is negative, distribute it out. So let's distribute it out. So negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times a negative 2 gives you a positive 2. So when you distribute out the negative, the signs change. Notice the common factor here and here. You always start with the common factor, x minus 2. Multiply it by the remaining factors, the 5x and the minus 1. I'm going to put a 1 right here. So times 5x minus 1. So whenever you don't see a coefficient in front of the group or the binomial, just put a 1 there. All right, easy. All right, let's keep on practicing here. All right, now on this one here, what two numbers multiply to this? Okay, now what is 7 times 14? It's negative something, so 14 times 7, 98. So what two numbers multiply to negative 98 and add to a 47? Well, 98's even. And 98 divided by 2 is 49. 2 times 49 equals 98. Okay, if you didn't know that, you can take 98 and divide it by 2 and you still get 49. So 2 times 49 is 98. So if I use the numbers 2 and 49, make one of them negative, because I have to multiply it to a negative. So make the smaller one negative, because when you add them, you want a positive number. So the bigger one has to be positive. Okay, so use those numbers. So here we go. So we have 7x squared. I'm going to start with 49. So 49x, excuse me. Let me start with just the original polynomial. Plus 47x minus 14. So splitting the middle term looks like this. So 7x squared plus 49x minus 2x. 49x minus 2x is 47x minus 14. So notice how I split the middle term here and here. See, those are equal, right? 49 minus 2 is 47. Okay, factoring out the GCF, I see a 7x in common. So 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 7 is 49x there. I see a negative 2 in common here, so I got to factor that out. I see the common binomial right there, x plus 7, so I'm going to start off with that. X plus 7 times the remaining terms, 7x minus 2. That goes here. And there we go. And again, this just takes practice, and it takes you to be able to multiply and divide, add and subtract a little bit, all right? And then you got to just play the number game. And when the numbers are pretty small, like on the next one here, it's not too bad. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And the coefficient here is 1, so you put a 1 here. So what two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to 1? Let me see. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Let me see. 2, 3 and 4. So let's use 3 and 4, make the smaller one negative. Why? Because negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. Okay, so we have 2x squared plus x minus 6. Splitting the middle term looks like this. 2x squared. I'm going to write the 4 first because I see a common factor between the 2 and the 4. So I'm going to write the 4 first. And then minus 3x. 4x minus 3x is x. And then the minus 6. Out of the first group, I see a 2x in common. Out of the second group here, I see a minus 3 or a negative 3 in common. Remember, the binomials are always going to be the same, and you check by distributing back through. Start off with a common binomial, x plus 2. Multiply by the remaining terms, 2x minus 3. And that's how the game is played, my friends. And the only thing you need to do is get used to it. All right, and that takes a lot of practice. So let's turn it over and let's do some practice here. Now, if you're in front of a video here, if you're working this at home, what I want you to do is pause and play. Pause, work the problem out, and then play it when you're ready and go through the lesson on your own by pausing and playing, okay? So pause and play and rewind if necessary and take yourself through the lesson. All right? All right, now pause and go for it. What two numbers multiply to this right here and add to 4? Pause the video. Okay, we're back now. 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. So what two numbers multiply to negative 60 and add to 4? Hmm. What would that be? So factors of 60, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. Ooh, 6 and 10, they have a difference of 4. So I'm going to try 6 and 10 and make this one negative. Negative 6 plus 10 is 4. So there we go. Okay, so now let's split the middle term. 4x squared plus 6x, minus 6x, plus 10x minus 15. Notice how I just split the middle term. 10x minus 6x is 4x. Factoring out the 2x here, common factor. Factoring out the 5. Factoring out what's in common. All right, I see x minus 3 in common. Multiply it by the remaining factors, 2x plus 5. Okay, and there we go. Pause the video, try the next one. Okay, let's check. All right, multiply the 6 and negative 5 to get negative 30. So what two numbers can multiply negative 30 and add to negative 7? All right, what are they? So factors of 30. So 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10. All right, 3 and 10, because they have a difference of 7. Make one of them negative. Whoops, excuse me, I didn't say it right. 3 and 10. Make 10 negative because you want a negative sum. All right, 3 plus negative 10 is negative 7. So what does it look like? So 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. Splitting the middle term, 6x squared plus 3x minus 10x minus 10. Factoring out the GCF of 3x. Gotta make sure. Oh, there we go. 3 times 2 is 6. So 2x here plus 1. 3x times 1 is 3x. Factor in a negative 10. Oops, that's not correct either. What's going on here? What's wrong? Oh, this is supposed to be a minus 5. That's what's wrong. So I can't factor out a negative 10. I can factor out a negative 5. So a negative 5 times 2x is negative 10x. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. There we go. All right, now I see the common binomial. See, I knew I made a mistake because the binomials weren't becoming the same. And I know that when you're using this technique, the binomials must be the same. And you multiply by the common or the remaining factors, the 3x minus 5. Okay, pause the video, try the next one. Okay, let's check. So 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. So what two numbers multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3? So factors 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So let's use 2 and negative 5 because you want a negative 3 here. So let's split the middle term again. So minus 3x minus 2. So 5x squared. And I'm going to start with a negative 5 because it has a common factor. So minus 5x plus 2x minus 2. Factoring out a 5x. Factoring out a 2. Notice there's an x minus 1 in common. So you factor it out. Multiply it by the remaining terms, 5x plus 2. So again, bring highlighters, and use highlighters, and you can see what's going on here a little bit better. And not only that, once you get good at it, you don't need highlighters anymore. All right, because you get good, and that's what happens when you get good. So you can start skipping steps, and you could see it in your mind. So pause the video, try the next one. Okay, let's check. 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. So what two numbers multiply to negative 24 and add to 2? So factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So which ones have a difference of 2? These two. So 4 and negative 6 it is. So we've got to split the middle term. So let me rewrite the polynomial over here. Splitting the middle term looks like this. 3x squared. I'm going to write the minus 6 first because it has a common factor with the 3. So minus 6x plus 4x, and then minus 8. Factor out of 3x. Factoring out of 4. All right, I see a common factor of the x minus 2, so that goes first. So we have x minus 2 times the remaining terms, 3x plus 4. Okay, pause the video, try the next one. Okay, so multiplying 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. So what two numbers multiply to negative 18 and add to negative 17? So factors 1 and 18, 3 and 6, 2 and 9. If I use 1 and 18 or 1 and negative 18, I get negative 17. So I want to use these two. Okay. So what does that look like? 3x squared plus x minus 18x minus 6. All right, factoring out an x. So I get 3x plus 1 here. Factor out a negative 6. I get 3x plus 1 again. All right, I see a 3x plus 1 in common. So start with that. So 3x plus 1 times the remaining factors, x minus 6. So x minus 6. And that's how the game is played, my friends. Okay, 2 more. Pause the video, try it again. Okay, let's check. All right, so what two numbers multiply to negative 60 and add to 17? All right, factors of 60 are 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20. Stop right there. 3 and 20 have a difference of 17. So I'm going to use negative 3 and 20. So split the middle term, 4x squared plus 17x minus 15. Splitting the middle term looks like this. Now I notice that 4 and 20 have a common factor, so I'm going to start off with a 20x. So plus 20x minus 3x. There's the splitting right there. 20x minus 3x is 17x squared. So I just split the middle term. I wrote the 21st because it has a common factor with a 4. So factor out the 4x. Factor out the negative 3. I see an x plus 5 in common. So you start off with that. So we have x plus 5 times the remaining terms, 4x minus 3. All right, last one, give it a shot. Okay, let's check. So we get 2 times negative 15 is negative 30. What two numbers multiply to negative 30 and add to a negative 1? Factors 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Okay, 5 and 6. These two numbers have a difference of 1. So I'm going to use 5 and negative 6. So what does it look like? We have 2x squared minus x minus 15. Split. So 2x squared. I'm going to start off with a negative 6 because it has a common factor with the 2. So a negative 6x plus 5x minus 15. I just split the middle term there. Negative 6x plus 5x is a negative x. Factoring out a 2x here in common, which is in common. You get this. Factoring out a 5. You get the same binomial. Every single time, right? As I keep on saying. So you start off with x minus 3, and you multiply it by the remaining terms, 2x plus 5. And you're done, okay? Now, To get as good as me, you got to do a lot of these. And trust me, over the years, I've done thousands, okay? And you haven't. So you got to do your homework too. This was just classwork. So next, all right, you have to do your homework to get the fluency and the practice and the speed. So do your homework on the next page. And I will see you in my next lesson. This is Mr. Ainsworth signing off. That was how to factor trinomials by using the technique called factor by grouping. All right, and I'll see you in my next lesson. Be your best. Bye-bye.